Okay, let's go ahead and get started there, folks. Welcome back to another 2 p.m. PST Twitch stream. I'm your host, Strange Bro Jim, and today we are going to be getting back into, once again, some Pega. Uh, we're going to be continuing that one module. Wasn't able to finish it off yesterday because there was some things that I needed to um, add to the conversation on that. We have some more videos to edit and upload and make public. And then, of course, we have Genshin Impact tonight. So hopefully you can look forward to that. Um, so, in terms of Pega, um, I want to, I put this at the very beginning of pretty much all these videos. So if you've heard this before, you could probably skip ahead a little bit. If you haven't, um, I say this just to make sure that, everybody knows who I am and what I'm doing. Okay. First off, I'm working on my certification. Okay. I have not gotten my system architect certification, so I'm working towards that. Okay. Um, I never got any kind of approval or anything like that from Pega, so this is not like, uh, this is not some kind of um, Pega endorsed videos or anything along those lines. Okay, so don't think of it as such. I mean, if they want to, I mean, we could talk, but I mean, um, you know, I I kind of doubt it. um, but you never know. Crazy things have happened. Um, Now I want to mention the fact that I am not an authorized training partner. And this is not an instructor-led training. Okay, do not consider it as such. Okay, if you're considering it as such, then well, um, don't know what to tell you, but I am not an expert in Pega. Okay, hence the reason why I'm trying to work towards my certification. One would believe that instructor-led training would be given by someone that is very well versed in Pega and that can actually answer your questions. I might have some difficulty with that. So, um, please continue. If you're watching these and you do have questions, feel free to ask them. Whether it's like right now during my stream, or if you want to just put it in the comment section, you're welcome to do so. Because maybe a little bit later, there might be, um, I might find the answer. There might be a professional that stumbles upon these videos and might answer those questions, for me. There might be a trainer that comes along these videos. Maybe Pega themselves come along these videos. Who's to say? Okay. Just if you're confused about a particular part of the topic, of the challenge, or something along those lines, feel free to ask because um, if you have that question, then someone else might also as well. Okay, so don't feel like you're alone in this. Okay, um, you know, everybody's going to be able to learn different. Everybody learns differently. Okay, so if you're not really understanding it, in a certain way, then maybe there's another way of explaining it, or maybe your question can is, someone else's question as well. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Okay, first and foremost, please do so. Okay, I can't guarantee that I myself will be able to provide an answer for you, but I'll see what I can do to, help. Okay, if it's not me, then I'll see if I can find someone that can answer your question. Okay, so um, So don't feel like you are going to be, you know, uh, you're never going to get an answer. Okay. Trust me. Um, I will do what I can to, um, you know, get you those answers. Okay. At least right at this point in time. Um, but we'll see. Okay. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the dashboard here. Um, as I mentioned, I'm working on my system architect certification. Um, Now, business architect, it goes side by side with the system architect fairly well. Okay, these two missions here, they're the same. Okay, so the only thing different that the business architect has that's different than the system architect is these two modules here. Okay, these are the only two modules that are not a part of the system architect. And of course, these 26 modules and 23 challenges are over there, of course. Okay, so after we're done with these two missions, I'll go ahead and go over these two modules because one, um, if someone's watching these videos and they're trying to go on the business architect track, then, I'll see what I can do about helping them out with that. Second, I might want to consider trying to do the business architect certification myself. Um, so those two modules will help me out as well. Um, but we'll see what we can do. Okay, so let's proceed on to the topic within System Architects. Um, Low Code Extended, Low Code App Builder Extended. According to this, we have 7 hours and 5 minutes remaining. So we still got a ways. All right. So we were on getting insight into business efficiency yesterday by going over the report browser. We did not cover reports though. So let me go ahead and tackle that. So reports, business and process metrics. Business applications often target performance gains in time and efficiency to reduce costs. Poor performance, such as long times to complete tasks, may show a poor application design. That's true. You need ways of understanding how complex processes are functioning to learn where bottlenecks are, where there are opportunities to improve response time, and what emerging trends need attention. Um, you know, please bear that in mind because, you know, some people see poor poor performance is based off of the worker when it could be the work itself. So, you know, data generated by an application can show what is happening, what has happened over time, and whether these results match or differ from your plan. Application data can be categorized as either business metrics or process metrics. Business metrics measure the success or failure of business processes and are based on the data you define for an application. Examples include the number of orders for a certain item or how many cancellations there are on a certain type of order. Organizations can use these business metrics to make informed decisions about improving business performance. The following table gives examples on how business metrics can be used in business decisions. So, what is the question? What is the average profit margin for all automobile sales last year? What is the number of auto loans made in a month as compared to personal loans for the same period? And what is the number of office desks shipped each week for the past month and how many are now in inventory? So the data indicates the average margin is below the target percentage. All right. The number of personal loans is significantly lower than the number of auto loans. And the number of orders shows an upward trend. So Um, so, what is the business decision concerning this? The sales department decides to train its sales staff on promoting cars and options that have the highest margins. All right. I mean, maybe it's well, here's another thing that you might want to consider is what is the current job market trend concerning this? Maybe there's a recession. Maybe there's a lot of people that are out of work. So therefore, the possibility of not a lot of car purchases are happening. So maybe it's, lower than expected. So, I mean, just trying to say, hey, promote more expensive cars might not necessarily be the answer. Maybe you guys need to worry about, hey, maybe look at trying to sell more economic vehicles, you know, to maybe boost up the average, maybe. Um, okay. The okay, so the goal is to have numbers approximately equal. The marketing department increases marketing resources for personal loans. Okay, I mean, sure, I mean you can market, but once again, you might be falling into the same trap of, what the current market is all about. Okay. Um, if you're dealing with a recession or depression or something along those lines where, you have a number of people that are like out of work, not a lot of them are going to be trying to go for very risky loans. Um, so they might want to consider, maybe changing up the percentage rates. Offer lower rates to, have the possibility of, getting more individuals that want loans. You know, you know, fixed percentage. So on and so forth. So, um, as a result, inventory levels are unacceptably low. The purchasing department decides to restock more desks on a weekly basis. Um, I'm not quite sure what this is kind of all about here. The number of office desks shipped each week for the past month and how many are now in inventory. Are you actually building these? Um, if it's along the lines of, hey, you're like part of Amazon or something like that, and you're ordering these desks from like a company that actually makes them, then okay. I mean, I guess this kind of makes sense. You purchase them you know, um, at manufacturer's cost and you sell them off. But, a lot more people are purchasing them more, so um, your inventory is low. That could be that could be what's going on there. Um, but um, if you're maybe in um, you're part of a corporation that is like sending out, um, you know, office equipment or whatnot to your own offices, then eventually that is gonna stop. It's not like, office desks are gonna you're swapping out office desks at an office on a regular basis. So, you know, so I'm assuming that's the first, where they're actually ordering desks. So that's all. That's what I'm thinking. So, all right, moving on. All right, process metrics measure how work is performed and are based on data automatically collected by Pega platform. Examples include the time needed to complete an assignment, how often a path is followed in a flow, or the number of service level agreement violations. Process metrics enable business analysts and business managers to discover issues that impact process efficiency. The following table gives examples of how process metrics can be used to process design decisions. Okay, so what is the question? Which open loan application cases exceed the standard 3-day service level deadline? And what is the average duration of assignments by type and action? So for the first question, the data indicates that most of the open cases are for loan amounts greater than 300,000. So, um, so they're noticing that loan amounts greater than 300,000 are exceeding the standard 3-day service level deadline. So they're going to need to figure out how to resolve that, right? Um, this report indicates which user actions take the longest to complete. Um, all right. I mean, that sounds reasonable. Um, all right. What is the process design decision? Loan requests that exceed 300,000 must go through an additional review step, which accounts for the increased processing time. The department manager decides to increase the service level deadline for loans exceeding 300,000 from 3 to 4 days. Okay, so they're just basically saying, hey, um, we're seeing the fact that it's taking people longer than 3 days to handle the 300,000. So let's just increase that time frame. Makes sense. Okay. Spend time on improving the efficiency of those assignments, taking the most amount of time to complete. Now, um, this might be a little difficult on doing, might be a little difficult on you know being like properly handled, right? So, like for example, um, you might not find an easy way of making something very efficient. Okay, like for example, like hey, I'm trying to, you know, bake cookies, right, or something like that. Well, I mean, uh, it's gonna be a little difficult for you to bake faster, without, causing, you know, problems to the cookies, right? Or something along those lines. So, um, you'd have to like try to figure out ways to do the same level of baking, you know, um, in a shorter amount of time. So, that um, might require a little bit more study on how to improve on that. And again, it might not have a really easy solution. Like you might not have like the tech in order to go about doing that at this particular moment in time. Doesn't mean that it can't happen like later. Um, okay, here's another example, right? Um, uh, I'll take something that so George Lucas, right? He made 4, 5, and 6. Okay, but he had ideas at how he wanted to do one, two, and three. Okay, but he couldn't do one, two, and three very easily. Okay, because um, he came up with the Clone Wars in episode four. He'd mentioned the Clone Wars, right? But how was he going to be able to do that with the technology that they had? Okay, it would be really difficult to try to um, try to add the same person into the same scene multiple times over and over and over again with just film. So, um, not to say that it couldn't necessarily be done, but the cost of it would be just like almost astronomical, most likely. Because um, you'd probably have to be doing something, like the old style cartoons where they kind of laid, stacks of scenes over and over and over each other just to get like one frame of animation. Um, so that would have taken a long time, and just editing alone to make sure that it looked good. Okay. And in, you know, m- most likely he looked at it and went, okay, I don't have, I don't have what I need in order to do that. Okay. Now, as soon as, computer graphics started really taking off and really pushing the limits, you know, um, computer aided graphics, you know, really, you know, um, came into being, and he was able to do the Clone Wars. Take an actor, have them do scene, their own. Um, it's like, okay, you're sitting here. We want you to do this. We need you to do, this kind of movement. Okay, cut, move, move to the next shot over, next scene, or we're gonna need you to do, something different. That kind of thing, right? So, and then they kind of spliced it all together, in the computers in order to make in order to make the clones. Okay. Um, it, obviously, it still took a lot of work in terms of like editing, but it was a lot easier to do by the time, he was able to do it. So, um, oh, yeah, okay. A little off topic. Let's move on. All right. So, a sales manager runs weekly reports on the cost of preparing a car for customer delivery. Which type of report metric applies to this report? Hmm. I figure that that would be a process metric, right? No. Well, hmm. This question is a little off. Because um, they don't they don't really state like, you know, cost, as part of the business metrics. Um, like this affects, how you know, like process the car, um, this, um, it's like, okay, well, I mean, you're putting some cost in preparing the car, or you're like, that can be kind of translated into like, hey, the amount of work that you do on preparing the car is going to cost so much. So, I mean, that could be considered, you know, you know, how work is performed. If it's costing too much, then maybe we need to look at, how to prepare the car in other more efficient means. But um, hmm, I don't know. I don't really like their example here because they didn't really. I mean, I get it, but at the same time, I could see both being, cost of preparing a car. So that's the reason why I picked the process metric. But measure the success or failure of business processes. I mean, cost of preparing a car isn't a success or failure, um, and are based on data you define for the application. I mean, that cost isn't a success or failure. That doesn't that doesn't equal each other. So, um, you know, cost of work sounds more like, how work is performed. So that's, mm, let me write up a suggestion here. Uh, quiz question for business or process metrics sounds more like process than business. Cost of preparing sounds like a um, cost of work, or how much work is costing the business, so it almost feels like it should fall under process than business. Maybe a different example is needed, or maybe a clear definition of business metrics is needed. All right. All right, the role of reports. Reports present users and managers with business and process metrics based on the data collected during case processing as a set of database records. When designing reports, knowing what information users need and how to use that information is vital. Stakeholders can provide you with the requirements necessary to create the required reports. For example, stakeholders may want a report that shows the number and dates of result cases so managers can check process throughput and determine whether an application meets performance objectives. Reports can also fetch data to populate user forms with data. For example, stakeholders may need a report that contains a list of customers and their purchase orders. So when a customer calls to file a complaint, the operator can view the customer's previous orders. Report structure. Once you have business requirements, you can configure a report to specify the data from each record that you want to include in the report. The report retrieves the data from a database and returns the results in a table of columns and rows. In the following example, a report returns the case ID, employee name, employee hire date, and office location for onboarding cases. I mean, can't you change the how you display the results? Does it have to be in a table of columns or rows? All right, columns. Define the content of the report. Defining columns in reports is critical to designing report users need. Each column corresponds to a single data element. The value of the column can be a value field or property such as case ID, last modified date, or work status. You can format the data value in various ways, such as text, currency, or date. For example, you can format currency properties to include a currency symbol. You cannot display a data relationship in a column. For instance, if you have an employee data relationship, you can return specific properties, but not the entire group. For example, a human resources application processes cases for onboarding newly hired employees. The organization has 3 office locations. The facilities manager wants a report to monitor new hires. The manager wants to see when the new employees were hired, where each person is assigned, and where each person is assigned. You design a report on the onboarding case type that has 5 columns. Each column includes a field or property, case ID, new hire name, hire date, office location, and salary. When the manager generates the report populates a list of rows with values for each column. You can use calculations in columns to make reports more useful. Calculations are also known as functions, enable you to calculate results derived from data in the database. Pega platform provides many standard functions you can use without having to create or customize functions. For example, every new hire is evaluated 30, 60, or 90 days from the start date. A manager wants to see the number of days remaining until each evaluation. A function calculates the difference between a new hire date and evaluation date. Oh boy, we still got a ways to go here. Alright, filters. By default, report queries return all the records that contain data from all the columns. You may want only to show records that are relevant to your business requirements. For example, your onboarding application collects information on all new hires. The facilities manager at each location needs a report that shows when the new hire needs a workspace. In this case, the user needs new hire start dates in the coming month for a single location. A filter defines a test applied to each record to determine whether the record contains data your users need. Filters compare a data value in the record against a defined condition. If the comparison result is true, the report includes the record. If the comparison result is false, the record is omitted. Assume you work for a company with two locations, Atlanta and Boston. You want to create a report of onboarding cases only for the Atlanta office location. You create a filter in the report that tests whether the office location for each onboarding case is in Atlanta. When you run the report, the filter returns only cases for the Atlanta office. If the office is Boston, that case is excluded. So you have the full list here. You're just trying to get all the Atlanta office, so you filter out everything that is Boston and only show the ones that are for Atlanta. So in a filtering condition, the comparison can be explicit value or the value of a property or field. For instance, if you want to create a report that returns open orders for a customer, you use a customer property in the filter condition as a comparison to the open orders. The return record shows open orders for each customer. In the previous example, the filter condition uses a comparison that states office location equals Atlanta. Therefore, only records where the value of the location property equals Atlanta are included. You can also use more complex conditions, such as testing values that are greater than a specific threshold, like a date. When you use date or datetime column data in your filter, you can select time periods by using symbolic dates. Symbolic dates let you select time periods or dates without having to build functions. For example, you may want to filter all cases created in the previous month. If you select the previous month symbolic option rather than write a function to define the period, the following image shows a partial list of symbolic dates available to users. Sometimes you may need to create a more complex filter to capture multiple filtering conditions. You can use multiple filters by adding and or conditions. For example, you may want to filter out cases with a status of pending for the manager and Walker. You create two filter conditions. One filter states that cases equal to status of pending. The other filter states that the manager equals and Walker. Use an AND condition so that the record must pass both filters to be included in the report. Yeah, we're okay with that note. I mean, you can go see these other web pages if you really want to, but we're gonna move on. Um, a report column blank, a report filter blank. So, Okay, so far the second half looks good. Defines the content of the report. I think that first one is correct. Yeah. So, um, I thought, this first sentence kind of threw me off a little bit because I thought it was asking like, it was giving a column would give the actual content, or the actual values of the report. But no, it says it defines the content, not gives the content. So that's where um, that's why you have to be really careful in terms of word use for these questions, because you know a single word could make or break you know um, the questions that are being asked to you. Okay, and obviously that will happen on the certification, so be prepared. You know, uh, you know, read through the question a couple times if needed. Okay, if you're not really grasping it very well, then read through it again. Make sure you understand what it's going for. Okay, knock out any answers if you can. Okay, um, you know, um, if one of the one thing that you got to remember when it comes to anything that like deals with any kind of multiple choice is that you can remove some of those choices. You know if you look at it hard enough. So let's go on to the module quiz and finish that off before we run out of time here. Um, okay, so this one isn't exactly the best multiple choice here, but we might be able to um, cancel out some options here, right? So drag each report category to a corresponding description. Reports provide data based on resolved completed work. Okay. Reports list or summarize open, unresolved work items in the application. Reports provide information about how long assignments are open. Okay, um, so analyze performance typically means like, hey, you want to look at things that are, after they've been kind of completed, right? You don't necessarily want to like analyze performance like during, because that might not necessarily give you um, a full look at what's going on, right? So trying to put this one here, for example, that wouldn't necessarily work because this is all about summarizing open unresolved work. So analyze performance shouldn't be that second. All right. Um, so would it go here? Provide information about how long assignments are open? Maybe, maybe, but it might not be like the best one for that. Reports provide data based on resolved completed work. Now, I would imagine that this one goes up here, okay? Because reports provide data based on resolved completed work. Okay, so it's looking at the overall performance of what happened after the work has been completed, right? So what is monitor processes and monitor assignments? Okay, um, so here's the thing. Look at the word choice here. Okay, monitor processes versus monitor assignments. Okay, um, you know, and then you look at these two that are here, okay, and it says reports provide information about how long assignments are open. Reports and lists to summarize open unresolved work items in the application. Well, work items could could be another way of saying processes. Let's see if I'm correct on that. Okay. So so be aware of like, the word choices here and remove some of the options sometimes. So not the best one to kind of go through it, but you can you can kind of work through, logically what, each one's trying to go for sometimes. So, um, okay, so here we are with a multiple choice. We're only selecting one of them, right? So, a manager requests a report that contains the following columns: create date, case ID, create operator, and work status. You must sort the create date values so that the most recently created cases appear at the top of the list, with the remaining cases descending from newest to oldest. So how should you design the report to support this requirement? Okay, so um, obviously you want to try to you're looking at the create date than anything else, right? You're not really looking at case ID, create operator, or work status on any of these um, for anything here, right? So um, so but unfortunately, all four of these are referring to create date, so that's not helping us very much. Okay, so now let's look at, um, you know, we're looking at the most recent created cases. Okay, so um, configure the create date as the first column in the report. Well, I mean, that's not going to do anything about, whether or not they're you had the most recent cases or anything along those lines. That has nothing to do with it whatsoever. So this one is straight out, you're not you're not doing any kind of sorting to in this particular answer. So this one is right out. Get rid of it. Okay, it's not helpful for you. Um, Add a filter condition where create date is greater than 1. Huh? Greater than 1, what do you mean? That that really has no bearing on a date. Um, you know, if you um, if you're having the date as 1 for like say the year, then um, wouldn't you have everything being greater than 1? So would that wouldn't necessarily sort the cases in any way whatsoever. You're probably going to get the exact same um, order. There's not going to be any change there. So this one, again, right out. Don't bother with that one. For the create date property, select count in the summarize column. Um, Again, you're for this one, it's very similar to the third one here. How would count really help you in terms of um, in terms of order? Now it might maybe like um, if you do something along the lines of like, hey, if today's date is um, like today's date subtract, you know, um, you know, the date on the list kind of thing, and determine, you get a number there, then maybe, just maybe, you can try to maybe sort that, but it's not really saying that either. So um, so I don't think this one is the correct one. I feel like it's this one here, select highest to lowest sort type. But I mean, highest to lowest doesn't necessarily address like, what is the highest date? What is the lowest date? I mean, um, if you determine it in terms of seconds, then yeah, I mean that might work. Like if you have if your date has more seconds than, a date that was like a couple weeks ago, then obviously the one that is, further along, or, a later date, could potentially be a higher value. So this one might work, but it feels very off. But let's check the feedback. Apparently they feel that this one is also correct. Um, Again, I don't know if that's really the best one for it, but um, it's the choices that they gave us. So, all right, next question. A manager has requested a report that shows the purchase requests for each of the regional cost centers. The manager wants to organize the results so that the cost center appears only once on the report and the requests are listed under the cost center. Okay, so um, use the request column to group the results. Well, no, not necessarily. You want to kind of group them under the cost center, because you want the cost center to be shown only once, and then the number of requests are listed. So, um, this one doesn't necessarily work. Summarize the request columns by count. I mean, um, maybe that might work. Um, but um, would that only limit the cost center to appear only once? Hard to say. Probably not, though. Filter results said that only cost center and requests are included in the report. Well, I mean, that doesn't really work very well, because once again, you're trying to go for only once on the report. So, um, this could potentially show the cost center multiple times. So, use the cost center column to group the results. This one seems like the better choice out of all of them, because um, you're wanting to, gather all the requests the under the cost center. So um, this seems like the best one out of the bunch. So, and they agree. Okay, now we're on to the last question here. The payroll manager requests a report on the average length of time required to obtain the various approvals for employee raises and promotions. What type of metric does the report provide? Okay, we already know approval metric. There's no such thing. So we ignore that completely. Get it out of here. Don't need it. Okay, so we're only looking at business process metric, right? So now we look back at the question here again. Request a report on the average length of time required to obtain various approvals for employees' raises and promotions. Um, that to me sounds more along the line of the work than business. So yeah, okay. But again, um, well, thankfully we didn't have anything that felt like it was very borderline. But average length of time, um, you know, to obtain approvals sounds more like you're looking at work metrics than business, you know. So, so looks like we're all done here. And results is 100%. Yay! I'm just saying that ahead of time because I kind of already knew. But all right, we're pretty much done with this particular topic. Um, I could kind of show you um, some of the reasons why some of these don't necessarily work. Um, or we can see about like, hey, what is their feedback for wrong answers. So um, yeah, let's do this one. Filter and report only include cost centers and requests does not limit the number of times a cost center appears in the report. So um, let's see. We have the business metric here. Business metric report provides information on the data you define in your application. So da, 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 um, let's do this one because that one is, I mean, um, you could probably get away with trying to do something like this, but you would need more than what they're giving. So the setting creates a summary report does not support the requirement. So, okay. Um, so that's it for this particular module. We are all done with gaining insight into business efficiency. So we're going to be moving on to the challenge that comes right afterwards, um, which is creating a custom business report. 3 tasks, 15 minutes. So it, might be a fairly long one overall. We have this next module after that, though, of 30 minutes. So this is going to be a fairly long one as well. So we're going to obviously tackle those um, tomorrow, and if not, and most likely the next day, or not, a couple of days. It all depends on what they provide. So, but that's going to be it for um, our Pega series for today. We're going to go ahead and close on down um, for that. If you have any kind of questions or concerns or anything along those lines, feel free to leave them in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube later. Um, like I said, you're always welcome to come on back and ask me questions while I'm streaming. I will try to answer them to the best of my ability, but also know that, I'm not an expert on this either. So I will do the best I can. Um, you know, if you're watching this, please, do all the normal YouTube stuff. That'd be great. That would help me out. Um, you know, uh, Feel free to stick around for some more Pega videos. You're also welcome to check out all the other playlists that I have. Programming and gaming. Um, they're not edited, so they're a lot of content. So um, I'm trying to do what I can to get that to work. So um, I try to edit, but I'm not the best at it, so I'm kind of struggling on those. So um, but be patient. I'll see what I can do about having some edited content for the games shortly. But that's it. We're gonna go ahead and shut the recording down.